This is Dr. Russ Barnes, CEO and founder of Sistro Solutions. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my background so that we know where to start with this whole process. So I grew up in New York, and as a kid, one of 8 kids in my family, we didn't have a lot of money to go around, and I made up my mind at an early age that I was going to find a way to make money. I didn't want to rely or depend on anyone to help me make money, to provide for me. And that mindset, starting at such a early age, informed every decision that I made from that point forward. It just turned out that even though I was a youthful entrepreneur, not really making much money because I didn't have the insight or the mentality or the creativity to do things that were really going to make a lot of money, I did the pretty typical to see that you normally see: delivering newspapers, shoveling snow in the north, raking leaves, all of those kind of standard things that you might see typical. So my thing wasn't that much of seeing something that hadn't been done before and doing it. But I was still determined to make my own way, do my own thing, make as much money as I could, pay for my own stuff. And I ended up having a little bit of a detour. I joined the military, served 27 years, primarily in the Air Force. I was a joint officer. That's another thing that we don't need to go into too much detail, but that basically meant that I served with every other service and not just specifically with the Air Force. Retired in 2009 as a colonel, and that's really where this part of the journey comes in, and this is what I really want to share with you as we go through this conversation. When I retired as a colonel in 2009, I decided I was going to go back to that entrepreneurial mindset that I had as a kid, and I was never going to work for anybody ever again. Now, that's a big ticket order, because having been in a corporate environment for 27 years and then come out and say, I'm going to be a businessman, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to own a company, I'm going to build a company, and I'm going to make as much money as I can make, that's a pretty tall order. And I spent a lot of money trying to learn which path I should take. And in that process, I started to figure out, hey, I'm not even close to being ready to be an entrepreneur. People were throwing stuff against the wall, figuring things out. It was the wild, wild west. There were all kinds of traps and pitfalls. And fortunately for me, I could see the traps and the pitfalls. So I made a decision that I was going to go a different route. I had already built something very financially stable for my family, and I didn't want to put it at risk. So I had to find a better way to figure out this process of being an entrepreneur and being successful and being profitable without going broke. So where the journey starts to dovetail with what you all are and where you all are, which is one of the reasons why you may be listening to this, is that the environment that we live in right now is it's rough. A lot of people losing jobs, technology coming in and taking jobs. While some people may say technology is creating some jobs, that may be true, but where are you in your life, and what do you have to do to prepare yourself in order to take advantage of the technology that is now available to us? And I may delve into that a little bit later, what that looks like. But right now, the challenge and the problem that we're all facing is, if our jobs go away, what do we do to provide for our families? That's at the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to be able to eat. We need to be able to have a place to sleep and shelter and clothing. We need to have these things. And if we don't have these things, we can't move higher up on the process to become self-actualizing, to become the best person we can be, if we're not able to provide for those basic needs for us and our family. So that's where a lot of us are going to find ourselves in the situation where we just don't have the means to be able to do those things. Homeless, you look at the homeless community right now. How many people have been homeless? And what do you do once you fall that low? You don't have a place to take a shower. You don't have clean clothes. You don't have a place to rest your head. You don't have food to eat. How do you pull yourself up from that situation? So what most of us are going to have to do is prevent ourselves from falling into that situation. And the way we're going to have to do that is by learning how to use our own skills, talents, and abilities to generate revenue that is life-sustaining and lifestyle building for us. That is not going to be easy. And especially if you don't already have some resources socked away. And how many of us have been living paycheck to paycheck for years? And now all of a sudden the paycheck is gone? What do we do? So when I retired and I decided I didn't want to work for anybody ever again, I started down this path of trying to understand how all of this stuff worked. And one of the things that I was really good at ever since I was a kid was strategy. Looking forward into the future to see where it was that I wanted to be in my life. And I used that mindset and that mentality when I started to try to figure out how am I going to generate revenue in my life for my family using my skills, talents, and abilities. So the first thing I did was I went into a franchise. It was a safe, risk limited approach to learning myself, to learning the environment, to learning the tools and the techniques, to building relationships with people who could help me to do what I wanted to do, which was have the financial freedom so that I'd be able to do whatever I wanted to do without worrying about how much it cost. So this is how this whole journey began. Within the franchise, it was a leather restoration and vinyl repair franchise. Now, I think I did tell you that I retired as a colonel, an officer, which means that I spent a lot of my time behind the desk. I spent a lot of my time thinking. I spent a lot of my time creating programs and creating frameworks and creating structures. And I did not spend a whole lot of time working with my hands. So this was a very interesting approach for me to take to learn business, but it was cost effective. It was what I could afford. I had enough money that I could pay for the franchise fee, have some money to put into growing the company, and that was the real basic behind me making that decision to go into leather restoration and vinyl repair. The company was great. The CEO was great. The philosophy, he wanted to grow from 200 franchises in Canada to plus 800 franchises, including franchisees in the United States. And since I'm down here in Florida, I was a prime candidate for expansion because I think there was only one other franchisee in the whole state of Florida when I joined that company. It turned out to be the best decision. I ended up working in that company for 2.5 years of a 5-year contract, actually 3 years of a 5-year contract. And I chose it because it was a 5-year contract, not a 10-year contract. I chose it because I didn't have to pay royalties. I was able to pay a flat fee per month. I chose it because of the support in terms of selling, the conferences that we were attending, and all those things that helped me to understand this landscape of being a business owner, of running a company. And so after about 2.5 years, I was pretty fed up with leather restoration and vinyl repair. That was not my thing. But along the way, I was able to join organizations such as Business Networking International. I took a lot of training with BNI, and I learned a lot about referral marketing and things that I needed to do. I made a lot of connections. But what I saw most of all, and most importantly, was that people were struggling, and they were doing what they'd been told they need to do, but they still were struggling with making the amount of money they wanted to make when they started down this process. They were not living the lifestyle that they thought they would when they started down this process of building their own company. And that became an obsession for me. The question was why? Why are they writing business plans and then the business plans aren't working? Why are they out there hitting the streets and selling day after day after day? and yet the sales are not generating enough revenue for them to live the lifestyle that they wanted to live? Why are they building marketing campaigns and paying for ads and doing social media and doing SEO and doing all those things that we were told we need to do to be profitable in a company that wasn't working? That became an obsession for me to figure that out. Because of my background in strategy, I decided to take the approach that, hey, why don't we look at where you want to be? And I started asking these business owners, how much money do you want to make? How many people do you want to have in your company? How long do you want to work? How much do you want to sell your company for if you have built it to a certain level? Do you want to retire from the company? And if you want to retire, who do you want to take the company over? Do you want to give it over to the employees? Do you have somebody in your family, a son, a daughter, a nephew, a niece, somebody who would take over the company for you? What do you want this journey to end? How do you want this journey to end? And 90% of them had no idea. Probably closer to 99.9%, but I'm being generous. Had no idea, had not thought about how much money they wanted to make. It was just a day to day. I need to make enough money to pay the bills. I need to make enough money to cover expenses. I need to make enough money to put food on my table and clothes on my back and pay my bills, my rent, my mortgage, whatever it is. And that was what was keeping these business owners going from day to day to day. It was survival mode. So coming from the strategic mindset that I had, I said, that's no way to run a ship. You have got to be more aware of what your destination looks like. And so what I did was to then start to put together this framework. And strategy is just really all about long-term thinking. When you really boil it down, it's just about long-term thinking. So I created this simple formula. I'll call it a simple formula in terms of how to put together an effective strategy for a small business owner. Now, it's this, and I'll just give it to you right up straight out. How to get from where you are to where you want to be. It's simple. And because it's simple, it's actionable. When you start getting too complicated, you don't do anything. You procrastinate because you can't figure out what the next step looks like. But if you just keep it simple and you say, how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? Then all you have to do is look at, well, where do you want to be? And figure that out. And then you have to look at, where are you? And now once you know where you are and where you want to be, you can connect the dots. So let's make that simple. So if you want to generate $100,000 a year, because that's what you feel is going to make you comfortable and give you the things you want out of life financially, but now you're at 20,000 or 30,000, now you have to say, okay, how do I generate an additional $70,000 a year so that I can hit that six-figure income that I want? Now you can say, okay, what are my talents? What are my skills? What can I do? And then that now becomes, what problems can I solve? What painful, urgent problems are people dealing with that I can solve with my skills, my talents, my abilities, my experience, and my knowledge? And once you start to connect those two dots, your ability to solve a problem with other people's ability to not solve that problem, but struggling and suffering with that problem, that's where now you have something that is marketable. Because what do you pay for? People pay for the things that they cannot do for themselves. They pay for solutions to the problems that they cannot solve for themselves. That's what you pay for. And whether it's a problem that is on the good side of things. For example, I want to take a vacation, or if it's a problem on the bad side of things where I can't fix my car. I don't have the skills and talents to repair my car when it breaks down. Those are the things you go pay people for. If you want to take a vacation and you want it to be a great vacation, you go, and you can't do it yourself, plan it yourself, you go find a travel agent. And you say, hey, help me take this money that I have and spend it effectively so that I can have a great vacation. These are the things that we pay for. So when you start looking at what it is that you can do in order to build a business, to use your skills, talents, and abilities to make money, the important thing is Make sure you're working from your skills. Make sure you're working from your strengths, the things you do well, the things people tell you you do well. Too often we run away from our talents because we think, oh, that's so easy. Anybody could do it. You know, it's not worth me charging people for because anybody could do it and they can get somebody else to do it. No, you have to remember that your talent is your talent. And you start looking around and you see how many people can do what you do as easily as you do it, with as much fun as you do, with as much interest as you do it. You're going to find out that you are worth a whole lot more than you thought you were worth. And these are some of the foundational, fundamental things that I had to deal with when I was coming out of the military, making a decision to be an entrepreneur, making a decision to never work for anybody ever again, making a decision to make money based on my own skills, talents, and abilities, which, oh, by the way, I still didn't know what they were. So my 2.5 years in the franchise business gave me the opportunity to identify what I was good at, where people looked to me for solutions, what they were asking me, what they were telling me I was really good at. And I had to step and embrace those things and build my company around them, which is what I did. So after 3 years with the franchise, I was pretty fed up with leather restoration and vinyl repair because, like I said, that was not my thing. And I found this thing called organization development. Now, I'd heard about it before, but I had never really embraced it to understand what it was all about. Well, when I started looking at organization development and how that applied to large corporations and realizing that I'd done a lot of organization development work in the military, and I said, you know what? I think this is missing from small business. And I started to try to apply those organization development principles and those strategy development principles to small business based upon how I understood them to be applied in corporate. And guess what? No surprise, it did not work. Because in corporate, you have people, you have money, you have processes, you have resources, you have teams, you have a whole lot of things that a solopreneur does not have. None of it. You are alone on an island by yourself with no money, no people. You have recognized that you can solve someone's problem, but you don't know anything about the business side of things. That's where I decided that strategy and strategy development could help. So I went back to the basics. I actually ended up going into a PhD program, had a couple of master's degrees already, and one of them was an MBA. And that was another surprise for me to say, wow, I'm starting this business and I'm going into this, building this company, and I have an MBA and I don't have any clue about what to do and how to build this company. So I went back and I took a look at my books and all the textbooks that I had going through my MBA program, and guess what I found? I found that they taught me how to be a corporate employee. They did not teach me how to be a business owner or an entrepreneur. So again, I found myself back at square one because now I had to figure all these things out. So going back to the definition of strategy, how to get from where you are to where you want to be, I drink my own Kool-Aid. So I used that formula for myself. I said, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. That was it. It doesn't have to be detailed, specific. You don't have to write a whole business plan to figure out where you want to be. You just have to make a decision. And my decision was, I need to be an entrepreneur. I need to learn how to build a company. So what that enabled me to do was then I was able to go out and look at entrepreneurs and say, what do they do? How do they do it? Who are the best entrepreneurs on the planet? How much money did they make? How long did it take them to make it? All of these questions were now at my disposal to begin to start figuring out how to get from where I was, non-entrepreneur, to where I wanted to be, entrepreneur, where I was, non-business owner with no clue, to a business owner with tremendous business savvy. How do I make that trip? How do I make that journey? And by keeping my eye on those outcomes, I was able to navigate my way along the path. And of course, first thing is I need to learn some things. I need some education. I need some personal development. And that's where it all started with me, was the personal development. The franchise experience for me was a personal development. So many people say, what the heck are you doing? Leather restoration? You're a colonel. What are you doing? You've never worked with your hands. Why would you want to work with, why would you want to do something like this? Because what they didn't understand is that my long-term goal, my destination was to be a CEO. So I had to start at square one to learn how to be a CEO. And this was the opportunity that I had available to me. We can't always pick the path we want to take. We can't always pick the circumstances we want to have. And I did not have the option or the opportunity to pick the circumstances I wanted. So I took the circumstances that were available to me and I made the best I could out of them. And it was a beautiful thing, because as I began to continue down this journey and realize that the most painful and urgent problem that I could solve with my skills, talents, and abilities was for that small business owner who was unable to generate the revenue that they wanted to generate in their company. Painful, urgent, significant consequences, can't put food on your table. It doesn't get more urgent. It doesn't get more painful than that, people. It just absolutely does not. So I elected to take on that problem and address that problem using my skill, which was strategy development and organization design. So now I'm functioning and I'm operating from my strength and my skill set. But here we go again. When you see one obstacle in front of you, you can only focus on that obstacle, because until you overcome that obstacle, you don't see the next one down the path. So my obstacle was, how do I solve this problem? I started talking to small business owners about systems and processes and programs. And you know what they looked at? They looked at me and did? Eyes rolling back in their head. What are you talking about? I don't want to do that. That sounds like it's work. That sounds like it's going to make me be strict and disciplined. And I just want to go into this business and use my creativity to solve these problems and make some money. I don't want to be up doing all this discipline stuff. I know it's important, but I'm going to be creative and I'm going to be charismatic and I'm going to be out there. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to grind. I'm going to be on the grind and I'm going to make it happen because I work hard. That's what I got. So this idea that I had in my head that systems would make their life easier, it wasn't the right solution. And we can't determine what the right solution is for other people. You all and they all determine what the right solutions are for themselves. So I listened and I said, okay, if systems and processes and frameworks and programs and all these kind of things are not the things that you need to do or you want to do to be successful and profitable in your company, what is it then? And it was, well, I would like to have something that was step by step. I would like to have something that was structured, but that didn't limit me. It didn't put me into a box where I was doing something that somebody else told me to do. I want to retain my creativity. So now we go back to this idea of strategy development again. And we go back to the definition of strategy development, which is what? How to get from where you are to where you want to be. There's 1,000 ways to get from where you are to where you want to be. You don't have to be limited in your creativity at all. When you know where you are and you know where you want to be, you can now figure out that path. And let's just take it to real terms. If you were going on a trip, if you were, I'd say I live in Florida. I grew up in New York. I want to go visit family. If I want to take a trip from Florida to New York, you know how many different ways I can take that trip? I can fly. I can drive. I can go out to the coast. I could take a boat up the coast. I could walk. I could run. I can ride a bicycle. I can go by way of Atlanta. There's so many different ways I can make that trip. I can take 24 hours or I can take 2 weeks. There is nothing that limits your creativity and how you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be in terms of going from Florida to New York, and it's the same in your business. Once you decide what that destination looks like, it gives you directionality. I am going that way. And when other people come up to you with ideas and they come up to you with possibilities and they come with you with opportunities, if those opportunities are taking you to New York by way of Atlanta, you're probably going to say, no, I don't want to go that way to go that way. I want to go directly to my destination. That's where I need to be. And you can now make those kind of decisions about what your journey is going to look like. So, two things that you need to have when you start setting your destination. You need to have your money. How much money do you want to make? And it's not that hard to figure out. And even if you just start with a certain amount of money and you say, hey, I want this amount of money. And then later on, as you go down the path, you start figuring you either want more or you need less. You can make an adjustment. I don't particularly recommend that you start making adjustments to your destination, but it's possible and you can do that. And the other thing you need to do is have meaningfulness. What is it that you're doing based upon your own skills, talents, and abilities? Now, I see a question out here sharing some of the books in the background. Oh, there's a lot of books in the background. But I will say it is a very organized bookshelf. If I can point, I don't know if I can point here, but if I point here, these three shelves are all the books that I used when I was in my PhD program. These books down here have everything to do with organization development, organization design. All of those books on the top shelf, those are all books from my military career. All the books that I was using and reading when I was in my military career. Over here, we have books about the African American community. Down here, we have books. Let me see. I'm not pointing here. Out down here on the bottom shelf down there, we have books about religion, Bibles, books about different theologies and different things like that. So there's quite a range of books in here. That closet door there that's closed, there are a bunch of books in there as well. And then this is a mess over here because I'm actually working on my office, so don't judge me too harshly. But all of these books over here, these are books that I use currently in the business. So these are books that have to do with scaling up, business model generation, selling. I have about 7 to 8 books up there about selling. I have Rich Dad Poor Dad books, Robert Kiyosaki. I have Paid to Speak. There's books about passion test and how do you figure out with your personality and who you are and what your strengths are. I have strength finders up there. The books that I recommend most frequently from that bookshelf, number one is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. That's a book that gives you a mental framework on how you should approach your business. And that book is phenomenal. I've recommended it many places. Another book I have that I recommend over there is Profit First. And Profit First by Michael Michalowicz is all about how do you manage your money. And you have to be able to manage your money. You have to know how much you have, what is your cash at the end of the day, where is that money going. And one of the problems that we make as financial managers of our own money is that we start to think that, oh, we just got this big check and this check is going to cover and it's going to fix all the problems that we had. Well, have you looked at the impending expenses that are coming your way, such as taxes? You may, if you're not paying attention to the expenses that are approaching, that are on the horizon, and you spend all that money that you just made today, those bills are going to hit you like a tsunami and they're going to drown you. So Profit First tells you how to be aware of all those different dynamics as it pertains to managing your money so you never get behind the power curve on the amount of money that you have. So I always recommend that book. Those two books I recommend very highly. Yeah, we can go into a lot of detail, a lot of books. And what I tell people is I did my PhD and I read the majority of these books. If I haven't read the book in its entirety, which is one thing I do, if I pick up a book to read it, I'm going to read it from cover to cover. I'm going to make notes in it. I'm going to argue with the author. I want to know everything there is to know about that. And if it doesn't resonate with what I already know, then I want to figure out why there's a disconnect. And I do all of that. I do all of that for you. For you. For those of you who want to go out there and be able to generate revenue based upon your own skills, talents, and abilities, you don't want to have to read all these books. You don't have time to read all these books. You don't have time nor desire and maybe not the money to go get a PhD. I do all of this so that I can simplify Because I said before, simple is actionable. If it's simple, you will do it. If it's too complicated, you're going to procrastinate because you won't know what to do next. You won't know if your decision is the right decision. So, my whole objective with Sistro Solutions, which is the name of my company, is to simplify, to make it such that you can take action. The definition of strategy, how to get from where you are to where you want to be, is simple. But it's also very complex because now you have to figure out where you want to be, you have to figure out where you are, and then you have to connect the dots. But that part is still simple. You don't have to go from point A to point Z. Once you start mapping out that path, you just have to go from point A to point B. And then figure out how to go from point B to point C and point C to point D. And oh, by the way, if you find out that point D is actually before point C, you can reprioritize. So we just want to keep it simple. So I've done all of this. I've done all of this reading. I've done all of this work. I put all of these programs together for the sole purpose of making it simple so that you will be able to go out and take action. So those are the books. Those are the books. I love my books. And oh, by the way, the books you see on the front, there's another row of books behind them. So that's why they're so close to the edge of the shelf, because there's another row of books behind them. So again, about knowledge, about generational wealth. Generational wealth comes from generational knowledge, and the more you know, the more you'll be able to assess your circumstances and make decisions. There's another book up here called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about 10,000 hours of work into something, and that's when you have achieved mastery. He did that one, and he did another one called Blink, which is once you have enough experience in a certain area, you can intuitively know that something is wrong. You don't know why, but you can intuitively say that something's not right there. And it's because your experience and your background and the things that you know tell you subconsciously that something is wrong. And then you can go in and do your homework, and then you can go in and look at things, and then you go, okay, now I knew it was wrong. I knew something was wrong. Now you can intellectualize that whole thing and figure out what it was that was actually nagging at you, but your gut told you first. Your intuition told you first. That's one of the other things that we do within the Sistro Solutions community is we take those things that you have been doing intuitively and that you have been succeeding with intuitively, and we bring them to your consciousness so that you can then be very intentional and purposeful about the things that you do. So let's get back to this journey. We get back to strategy development, organization design. I started to listen to small business owners and understand what their challenges were. And so what I elected to do was I said, okay, small business owners don't want to lose their creativity. So whatever I do, it cannot be a strict program that says, if you do A, B, C, and D, you're going to be successful. If you listen to me, you're going to be successful. A, B, C, D, listen to me and you'll be successful. It won't work. It doesn't work. And as a matter of fact, it works even less now because the environment changes so fast. By the time I told you to do A would be obsolete. You would now not only need to know B, but you would need to know C and D because the environment changes so rapidly. You just can't keep up with it. No one can stay ahead of you to tell you what to do so that you can then do it and you can be successful. So you have to figure it out. So now with this, how to get from where you are to where you want to be, it enables you to retain your creativity. What else it does is it removes the guesswork. Because by having a template or framework, you can say, okay, this is what I need to do. This is how I need to do it. But I can accomplish that in a variety of different ways. As an example, you need to do a business plan. You do. You need to write a business plan. However, how many people have ever been successful in building a business based on the business plan? Most people write a business plan and then they drop it in the drawer. And then when do they use it? When they want to apply for a bank loan, when they want to have a conversation with an investor and try to get the investor to invest some money in their company. Then they pull it out, they dust it off, and they update it, and then they use that business plan. So what does that tell you? The value of that business plan is as a marketing tool. The value of that business plan is as a way to demonstrate to someone who is going to fund your company that you have thought this thing through, that you know what you're doing, and that you're going to be able to make enough money to pay them back whatever it was they gave you. Investors don't give you money to figure out how to make money. They give you money because they want you to make money so that they make more money. Banks are not going to give you a loan to help you figure out how to build your company. They're going to give you a loan, but then they're going to want their loan back with whatever that interest rate is. And if you look like a bad risk because you don't know what you're doing and your business is not making money, and oh, by the way, those projections that you made have been made up, because they are made up, you don't have any clue. Very few people, when they're writing their first business plan or their second or their third business plan, have any idea how much money they're going to make if they haven't made any money yet. First, you have to make money, and then you can say, okay, based upon the customers that I have, based upon the amount that they're paying, if I can do this type of marketing, I can make some reasonable projections if I've already made some money. But if you haven't made any money, all those numbers are fictional, fake. So you do need to do a business plan, though, for just that reason, because you want to get to the point where you need some capital to grow your company, and you need to have that business plan. But you don't need to do that the first thing. And this is where a framework comes in. A framework tells you the first thing is don't do a business plan as the first thing. So what do you need to do as the first thing? A business model. A business model has a very simple formula, because I do what? I make things simple. I keep them simple. So the business model is, how do you connect your customer to your product? How do you create a solution that people are going to be willing and able to pay for? That's your business model. The business model is directly about making money. While you might write a business plan over here somewhere, and then you might make some money over here somewhere, a business model is you write a business model over here and you make some money over here. And then you move this way to the business model, and then you move this way to profitability. So what does that framework look like? What does that sequence look like? What does that progression look like? This is what strategy does for you. Strategy also gives you patience, because when you see how many things have to happen to get from where you are to where you want to be, you can then relax back and say, okay, if these are all the things that I need to do, I'm just going to focus on doing this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. It's like running a marathon. You can't start at the starting line of a marathon and skip 10 miles. I'm at mile 10 now. Decide that you're on mile 10 now. You got to run every mile from the first starting line to the last 1/10 of a mile, 2/10 of a mile. A marathon is 26.2. You got to run those last 2/10 of a mile after you've run the first 26. And it's no different in business. You got to run every mile. You got to take every step. So understanding what that sequence looks like, understanding what that progression looks like, that's strategy. And that can be simple. It allows you to continue to be creative, but enables you to remove the guesswork. That's what we do. We remove the guesswork. You can be more confident in the decisions that you make. You can be more confident in the intentionality and purpose. You can be more confident that you can achieve that desired outcome that you set, because who said it? You said it. And if it's what you want, then you don't need to be accountable to me. You don't need to be accountable to your spouse. You don't need to be accountable to your coach. You don't need to be accountable to anything. You need to be accountable to that desired outcome that you set for yourself. If you say, I want to make $5 million, that's what you want. And you shouldn't apologize to anybody for that. But you still need to back it off and say, what is it going to take for me to be able to make $5 million? Whose problem am I going to solve? At what price that they're willing and able to pay for? And does the market have enough people in it with that problem that's painful and urgent that I can then have enough customers to be able to generate the amount of money that I want? And that is all part of the strategy development program, strategy development process. So the hardest problem that I have had to solve in this process has been emotional. Logically, no problem at all. You wake up in the morning and you go, I need to do X, Y, and Z. And logically, you know you need to do X, Y, and Z. Here's where the problem comes in. When you start to think about what it takes to do X, Y, and Z, it's scary. And you may not want to do it. And I remember waking up many mornings, looking myself in the mirror and say, do not let how you feel determine how you act. You have got to get this done if you are going to succeed, and you just better buckle up, baby, and you better get it done. It's the ups and downs. It's the emotional roller coaster of being an entrepreneur. Some days you feel powerful. I got this. I can make this happen. And other days you're asking yourself, what was I thinking? Why did I decide to do this? It just doesn't make sense. And then the next day, you're somewhere in between. So you're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. And as entrepreneurs, especially if we're committed to that desired outcome, when we become committed to that desired outcome, we become obsessed. It's a market of an entrepreneur to be obsessed. And we will work ourselves to death trying to hit that objective, to get to that outcome. We'll do it. And so I'm a victim of that. I'm one of those who said, I won't, sleep is overrated. I'll sleep when I'm dead. I got things to do. I got to make this thing happen. Nobody's going to do it but me. And just drive and drive and drive and drive and drive. And along the way, I learned a very valuable lesson that the hardest working people don't make the most money. The hardest working people make the least money. When I start looking at the people who made the most money, man, it's like they skip into the bank. They're happy. And I started to figure out how they did that. And the way they did that is by making sure that they were operating and functioning from their strengths, making sure that they were cultivating relationships, making sure that they were focused on how people purchase, because we don't want to sell. Nobody wants to do that. Well, there are some people who do. They love to sell. But the majority of us, about 80% of us, when I give presentations and I go out and I poll the audience, I say, how many of you love to sell? Of us, when I give presentations and I go out and I poll the audience, I say, how many of you love to sell? About 20% raise their hand. So not everybody likes to sell, but everybody likes to buy. And people buy what they want to buy. Sometimes they buy what they need to buy, but even if they need to buy it, they also have to want to buy it. I need glasses. I don't want glasses. You see me wearing glasses? No glasses on this face. I buy what I want. We all buy what we want. So when you're building your business and you're creating your solutions, you need to create solutions that people want. And that's a whole part of it. So when you do that, then you put yourself in a situation where you can now promote and market, and you're spending your money trying to communicate and connect with the people who have the painful, urgent problem and the ability and the willingness and the able to pay for that product. And it just becomes a lot less stressful. All around, it becomes a lot less stressful. And when you start looking at these most profitable companies, you'll see some components of that. So look at somebody who's digging a ditch. There's a person digging a ditch. They're making X amount of dollars, a wage per hour. Then you have a supervisor standing up watching the person digging the ditch. Is the supervisor working as hard as the person digging the ditch? Nope. But guess what? Supervisor's making more money. And then you go to the boss who's sitting in the office behind the desk and air conditioner while the ditch digger is out there in the hot sun digging the ditch, and the supervisor is standing there, with a hat, maybe an umbrella, watching the ditch digger dig the ditch and making more money than the ditch digger. And the boss in the office in the air conditioner sit behind his desk. He's making more money than all of them. So how do you look at hard work? Now, yeah, you can say the boss sitting in the office is working harder, but he's working harder in a mental way. That's a possibility. It's probably true in many cases. But the point is, hard work, smart work. Work smart. Work smart. The hardest problem that I've ever had to solve is how do I handle my emotions? How do I manage my emotions? And the way I do that is keep my eye on the destination. And if that destination is strong enough and you are determined enough that you actually have to do that, then you're going to overcome all of those obstacles that fall in your way. And when I decided that I didn't want to work for anybody ever again, that wasn't just a nice thing that I wanted to do. I had no choice. I had no choice in the matter. My life depended upon it. If I hadn't made a decision to go work for somebody else at that point in my life, guess where I'd be right now? I might be one of those federal employees that would be laid off. And at my age, I don't want that to happen. So I said, okay, if I can build a company that I own and that I control, nobody can fire me but me. And I think I'm a pretty good boss, and I'm not going to fire myself because I'm a very valuable employee. So I made the decision that my freedom, my life, my freedom depended upon me being able to build this company into a successful and profitable company. So the biggest problem I had to solve was how do I deal with all of the stresses that come along with building a company. So those are some parts of this journey. Bring it to the current environment that we're in. As you all know, a lot of federal employees laid off, let go. AI, generative AI, Web3, a lot of these technological things coming in, and not only are laborers losing their jobs, but professionals are losing their job. An attorney who used to have a lock on all the knowledge in terms of legality now has to deal with somebody who went to a generative AI platform and put in a prompt and said, hey, write me an operating agreement, write me a licensing agreement. And then they walk into the attorney's office and say, here, I have this licensing agreement. I just need you to sign it. And oh, by the way, I'm not going to pay your fee because you didn't do the work, you didn't do the research, you didn't pull this whole thing together. I'll pay you for signing it. Now that attorney, so it's not just laborers, it's not just wage earners who are looking for other ways to maintain their lifestyle. So what are you going to do? People over 55 after a full corporate career, similar to what I went through. Hey, I'm not ready to retire. I'm feeling strong. I'm young. I'm not ready to sit on the couch. I'm not ready to play golf all day. I got to be doing something. I have to be doing something that is meaningful. And they're making a decision to go into business. Now, how serious they are about making that business a success, that's another thing. But they are still making the decision to go into business. So this is where all the work that I've been doing over the years in strategy development and organization design come into play, because it is critically important that you have a framework that you can use. And this is what we do. This is how we do it. And this is what you as an aspiring entrepreneur need to understand if you're going to take control and be intentional and purposeful about what you do. So looking to see if there are any other questions or comments that you may have about this conversation. I like to call it a conversation. Let me know. You can reach me at cistrosolutions.com. That's the website. There's a bunch of great information on the website. You can send me an email, info@cistrosolutions.com. And when you do that, either one of those, I'll be happy to respond. You can check me out on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/RC Barnes. That's my LinkedIn profile. So you can definitely contact me on LinkedIn and connect. and again, see some more philosophy and background on why I do what I do. And I would love to have these conversations. I'm always interested in talking about strategy, strategy development, organization design. We can get into some more about the framework. The basic framework is when you start out, you don't have revenue. You may be making a little bit of money, but revenue is something that is controllable and something that you can use to budget, to make a budget. And just because you have revenue, of course, you're not profitable. So you have to go from revenue to profitable. And then from profitable, you have to go to sustainable. And then from sustainable, you have to go to divestiture. How are you going to, at some point, exit that business? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to retire from it? There are certain things that you have to do and you have to have in place in order to make that happen. And so Sistro Solutions is all about progression. Sistro Solutions is all about intentionality. Sistro Solutions is all about purpose. Sistro Solutions is all about being accountable to your outcomes, not to anybody who's around you. And you can find more information about all of these things in my podcast, which is the Purposefully Profitable Podcast. And of course, you can find it on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on YouTube. So a bunch of different places you can look, but that's Purposefully Profitable Podcast. And that's where you'll find a lot more information on what we do and how we do it. So if there are not any other questions, I have had a really good time sharing with you the things that are important to me, the things that I believe are important to you, my desire, my strong, burning desire to bring those two things together. If you are struggling, if you don't know where your next dollars come from, if you don't have a sense of how you are going to weather this economic environment that we're in right now, and you're looking for answers, and that problem is painful and urgent, and it has significant consequences, connect with us. Contact us. Take a look at the YouTube channel. At Sistro Solutions is the handle. And listen to some of the videos and subscribe. Look at the TikTok videos we have, Sistro Solutions. Instagram, we're on Instagram as well. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. Take a look at some of those things and connect with me. I'd be happy to have the conversation. You all have a great evening, and I will see you around the block.